Get on the ground, now. Hands where I can see them. Marcus didn't move toward the ground. He raised his hands slowly, palms out, fingers spread, the way his father had taught him at 12 years old in a kitchen in Gary, Indiana. Officer, I'm a physician. My ID is in my left breast pocket. I'm going to... I didn't ask what you do. I said get on the ground. Officer Trent Kowalski's hand was already on his holster. A car like this parked here this time of night. You want to tell me how a guy like you ends up with an $80,000 Audi? I bought it. Marcus kept his voice level. Steady. The same voice he used at 3 a.m., telling families their loved ones would live or wouldn't. I'm responding to a cardiac emergency 2 blocks from here. There's a woman in distress. Every second you keep me here. Save it. Kowalski grabbed his shoulder and spun him. The handcuffs came out. Marcus felt the cold metal bite his wrist, heard the ratchet click, felt his cheek meet the cold hood of his own car. The stethoscope around his neck swung loose and dangled there against the paint. A car slowed on the far lane. A young man leaned out his window, phone up, laughing. Yo, they got him good. A woman in a parked SUV watched through her windshield and gave a small approving nod, like something correct was finally happening. And an older man on the sidewalk turned his collar up and walked faster, eyes down, wanting no part of it. Kowalski had no idea. Because the black man he just cuffed against his own car is the chief of emergency medicine at St. Vincent Regional. And the woman seizing on a living room floor 2 blocks away, the one Marcus was running to save, is the wife of his own police chief. And in 41 minutes, every choice Trent Kowalski made tonight is going to come apart in his hands. He just doesn't know it yet. But this story doesn't start here. Rewind 11 hours. Dr. Marcus Bell, 46 years old, had just finished an 18-hour shift. Chief of Emergency Medicine at St. Vincent Regional for 6 years. 19 years a doctor. The kind of man who remembered the names of the janitors and the names of the patients who died on his table at 2 in the morning. Both because he believed forgetting either one made you less of a healer. His father had carried mail for the United States Postal Service for 38 years. Walked a route in all weather, came home with his feet swollen, and sat at the kitchen table every night helping Marcus with homework. He barely understood himself, because he understood one thing completely, that his son was going to be something this country didn't expect him to be. He died of a heart attack at 61, 4 months before Marcus matched into his residency. On Marcus's office wall, in a plain black frame, was the last letter his father ever wrote him. Shaky handwriting. 3 sentences. You're going to fix what is broken in people. I am proud beyond words. Don't let them make you small. Marcus read it every morning before his first patient. Tonight, he wasn't on call. He was driving home, tired, thinking about nothing but his bed, when his phone lit up. A neighbor from his old block, Rosa, 72 years old, calling because the woman next door had collapsed. Chest clutched, lips blue, not breathing right. Rosa didn't know the woman well. New to the neighborhood. But Rosa knew Marcus was a doctor, and she knew his number, and she called him before she called anyone else. Marcus turned the car around without thinking. Called 911 himself on the way, gave them the address, told them he was a physician and he'd be on scene first. He pulled over near the corner because the street was blocked, grabbed the emergency kit he kept in his trunk, and stepped out with his stethoscope already around his neck. That's when Trent Kowalski's cruiser rolled up behind him. Kowalski was 34, 8 years on the force, twice named to the commendation list for arrest numbers. His face had been on a recruitment banner outside the precinct 2 summers running. Square jaw, folded arms, the words, "Serve with honor," underneath. The captain liked him, called him a self-starter. What the banner didn't say was that Kowalski had 9 civilian complaints in his file, every one of them involving a stop he couldn't justify. And every one of them closed without action by an internal review board that had never once, in 9 years, found against an officer. The system that made Trent Kowalski had also taught him, carefully and repeatedly, that there would never be a price. 2 blocks away, on a living room floor, Diane Russo was dying. 58 years old, married 31 years to a man she'd met when he was a beat cop, and she was a school teacher. Her husband was Chief William Russo, the man whose name was on the top of the org chart at the very department whose officer was, at that moment, pressing her only nearby doctor face down onto a car hood. Diane had a known heart condition. She'd moved with William to the quieter neighborhood 6 months ago for exactly this reason. Less stress, slower pace. She was alone tonight. William was working late, and the one person within running distance who could keep her alive was in handcuffs. "I'm going to ask you one more time to listen to me," Marcus said, his cheek still against the metal. His voice didn't rise. It got quieter, more precise, which is what it always did under pressure. "There is a woman in cardiac arrest 2 blocks from here. I called it in myself. Dispatch has the address. You can confirm it on your radio in 15 seconds. If she dies because you would not make a 15-second radio call, that is going to be on your record, your name, your badge number, which I can already see. 4471. You don't get to threaten me." But something flickered. Kowalski hesitated. In the back of his mind, Marcus was counting. Not out loud. Never out loud. Unlawful detention, excessive force, failure to inspect identification when offered, interference with emergency medical response, 4 violations, and the night was young. He counted them the way his father counted the days to payday, methodically, without drama, because the count was the only thing that was his. "Confirm it," Marcus said. "Just confirm it. Then keep me cuffed if you want. But pick up the radio." A second cruiser pulled in. Officer Priya Chandra, 6 years on the job, stepped out and read the scene in about 2 seconds. The stethoscope, the medical kit spilled open on the asphalt. The man in cuffs speaking in complete sentences about cardiac arrest. Her stomach turned. She knew. She knew the way you know when you've watched something wrong start to happen and you have a choice about whether to step into it. She didn't step in, not yet. "Trent," she said carefully, "maybe we run his ID, just to be clean. Make sure the report's airtight." Procedural language. The language of someone who knows, but won't say it. Kowalski grabbed the wallet from Marcus's pocket, flipped it open. Hospital ID. St. Vincent Regional, Chief of Emergency Medicine. State medical license behind it. He stared at it for a long moment, and then he made the choice that would end his career. "Could be fake," he said, and tossed the wallet onto the hood. "Sit tight, doctor." 39 minutes. 2 blocks away, Rosa was on her knees beside Diane Russo, pressing both hands to the woman's chest the way she'd seen on television, sobbing, counting wrong, doing her desperate best. Diane's lips were gray now. The 911 ambulance was 11 minutes out. A bad night. 2 crews already on calls across the city. Marcus heard the sirens that weren't coming for him and understood the math. He'd done this math his whole career. Minutes were tissue. Minutes were brain cells. Minutes were the difference between a woman who went home and a name in a logbook. "Officer Chandra," Marcus said, turning his head toward her, choosing her deliberately, because he'd seen the flicker too. "You know I'm telling the truth. You've known since you got out of the car. I am asking you, as the only person here who can still do the right thing, go to that address. 2 blocks. I'll tell you exactly what to do when you get there. You don't even have to uncuff me. Just go." Priya Chandra stood frozen between her partner and the man on the hood. 37 minutes. Kowalski was already drafting it in his head. The report, the version where this was a clean stop, where the suspect was uncooperative, where everything he did was by the book. He'd written this report before, 9 times. It always worked. He leaned against his cruiser and pulled out his phone, and on a private channel he typed to a buddy, "Got a live one tonight. Thinks his car makes him special, lol." He hit send. He smiled. He had no idea that his career was now measured in minutes. Priya moved. She didn't uncuff Marcus. She wasn't ready to cross her partner that far. But she got in her cruiser, flipped the lights, and ran the 2 blocks to the address Marcus called out through the window. She keyed her radio as she drove, and Marcus, shouting clear and calm from the hood of his car, talked her through it. Tilt the head back. Heel of your hand, center of the chest, between the nipples. Push hard, 2 inches. Fast. Count out loud. 30 of them. There's an AED in my kit, the yellow case. I need it there. Kowalski finally looked up from his phone. When Priya's cruiser skidded to a stop outside the house, she ran in and found a 72-year-old woman performing chest compressions on a gray-faced woman on the floor. She dropped to her knees, took over, and over the radio, Marcus's voice held them both steady. "Good. Don't stop. Keep the rhythm. Ambulance is coming. You're keeping her alive right now. You personally, keep going." The medics arrived 4 minutes later. They shocked Diane Russo twice. On the second shock, her heart caught. She was alive. And it was only when the medics pulled her ID to log her name that Priya Chandra, kneeling on that living room floor with her hands shaking, read it off the license out loud. Diane Russo. Emergency contact. William Russo. Chief William Russo. She keyed her radio. Trent. Her voice was different now. The patient. The woman the doctor was running to. It's the chief's wife. It's Diane Russo. He kept Chief Russo's wife's only doctor cuffed on a car hood. Silence on the line. 22 minutes. Back at the corner, the color drained from Trent Kowalski's face. He stepped backward, away from the man on the hood, like distance could undo it. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. He looked at his phone, still glowing with the message he'd sent. He looked at the wallet on the hood, the real ID he'd called fake. He looked at the stethoscope. Marcus straightened up off the hood as far as the cuffs allowed. He turned his head and looked at Kowalski with no anger in his face at all, which was somehow worse than anger. "My name is Dr. Marcus Bell," he said quietly. "Chief of Emergency Medicine, St. Vincent Regional. The woman whose life Officer Chandra and a 72-year-old neighbor just saved. The woman you delayed me from reaching by 20 minutes is Diane Russo. You should call your union representative. You're going to want to do that tonight." He flexed his cuffed wrists once. "And you can take these off now." Kowalski's hands were shaking too badly to find the key. Chief William Russo got the call at the hospital, where his wife was being wheeled in alive. He listened to the dispatch supervisor explain why she was alive and why she had almost not been. He stood very still in the hallway outside the cardiac unit. Then he asked one question, in a voice his officers had never heard him use. "What is the badge number of the officer who detained the doctor?" 4471, sir." The reckoning did not arrive all at once. It arrived the way these things really arrive. In a cascade, across days. each piece landing on the next. By morning, Trent Kowalski was on administrative leave, badge and weapon surrendered. By the end of the week, his 9 prior complaints, every one of them buried by the same review board, were pulled into a single internal investigation. And then, because the chief himself demanded daylight, a county prosecutor opened a separate criminal inquiry into unlawful detention and obstruction. The text message he sent from the hood of Marcus's car, "Thinks his car makes him special, LOL," was recovered from his department phone. It was read aloud in a disciplinary hearing. There was no version of the report that survived it. The captain who'd called Kowalski a self-starter, who'd put his face on the recruitment banner, who'd signed off on 9 closed complaints, he submitted his retirement papers 11 days later, on a Sunday, carrying 2 cardboard boxes to his car in an empty lot. No ceremony. No farewell. Trent Kowalski was terminated. He pled to 2 charges to avoid trial. He is permanently decertified. He will never wear a badge in this state again. The review board that protected him for 9 years was dissolved and rebuilt under independent oversight, with a civilian majority, because Chief Russo signed the order with his wife watching from a wheelchair in his office doorway. Officer Priya Chandra was promoted, not for the rescue alone, but because when the investigators asked her what happened, she told them all of it, including the part where she froze, including the seconds she lost before she moved. "I almost didn't go," she said in her statement. "That's the part I have to live with. I want every rookie I train to hear that story, so they go faster than I did." She runs the department's new field response program now. She tells that story on the first day, every time. Marcus Bell gave one statement to one reporter, and he chose his words the way he chose sutures. "I want to be clear about something," he said. "I am the chief of emergency medicine. I had an ID in my pocket, a license, a stethoscope around my neck. And none of it was enough, because the only thing the officer actually saw was a black man and an expensive car. I had every credential a person can have, and I was still face down on a hood." He paused. "People will ask why I didn't just make him understand sooner. Why I didn't shout my title, make a scene, force it. I'll tell you why. Because the next man he stops won't be a chief of medicine. He'll be a teacher, or a plumber, or a kid coming home from work. And if I have to announce my rank to be treated like a human being, then the protection isn't for human beings, it's only for the ranked. That's not justice. That's a hierarchy with better manners." He looked into the camera. "A badge is authority. Authority that can't be questioned isn't authority. It's just power. And power that answers to no one always, eventually, ends up with a man's face on a car hood for the crime of owning the car." Diane Russo went home from the hospital 9 days later. The first visit she made, once she could walk steady, was to Rosa's house, the 72-year-old neighbor who had knelt on the floor and pushed on a stranger's chest until help came. They sit on Rosa's porch most Sunday afternoons now. Neither of them talks much about that night. They don't have to. The young man who'd filmed from his car window, laughing, "Yo, they got him good," saw the story break 2 days later and recognized his own video, his own voice on it. He took it down. Then he did something he'd never done before. He wrote a letter to the local paper, signing his real name, describing what he'd laughed at and what it turned out to be, and asking the only question he had left. How many times have I driven past something like that and called it entertainment? It ran on a Thursday. It was not a grand act. It was one young man deciding to be slightly less of a bystander than he'd been on Tuesday. The last scene isn't a courtroom or a press conference. It's a porch. Marcus sat on his own front steps late on a Friday, the black-framed letter from his father resting on his knee. His wife, Dr. Angela Bell, a cardiologist, the woman who'd read the same letter 1,000 times and still teared up, sat beside him with her shoulder against his. "You could have made him confirm it in the first 30 seconds, she said softly. Flashed the credentials, made the noise. She still would have been saved, and you'd have skipped the handcuffs. I know. So why didn't you?" Marcus looked out at the street, at the ordinary dark, at the place where someone like him could be turned into a suspect by the simple fact of standing next to something nice. "Because the system shouldn't need me to be a chief," he said. "It should just need me to be a man. And the only way anybody ever sees the difference is if someone they can't dismiss gets put on the hood." He turned the frame over in his hands. "Don't let them make you small. I had the resources to survive being made small. Most people don't. So when it happens to me, I don't hide it. I make them look at it." Angela laced her fingers through his. "It's better than it was this morning," she said. "A little," Marcus agreed. "Not fixed." They sat with that. The streetlight buzzed. Somewhere 2 blocks away, a woman who was supposed to be dead was sleeping in her own bed. "Until it's fixed," Marcus said quietly, "someone has to be watching. And someone has to be willing to be the one they can't ignore. If this story moved something in you, anger, relief, or just the need to sit with it for a minute, pass it to someone who needs to hear it tonight. Stories like Marcus Bell's don't travel on their own. We carry them. A man with every credential in the world was still put face down on his own car. And the only reason it became a reckoning instead of a footnote is that, this one time, the person he was rushing to save had a name the system couldn't look away from. But justice shouldn't depend on whose wife is on the floor. It should depend on all of us refusing to look away. So tell me, in the comments, have you ever seen something wrong happen in front of you and stayed quiet, and wished later that you hadn't? What would you do differently now? Share your story. Someone reading needs to know they're not the only one who's still carrying it. And if you believe accountability shouldn't require a badge or a rank or the right last name, subscribe and stand with the people who keep watching when it would be easier to look away, because every story we refuse to bury is a vote for a world where no one has to be a chief to be treated like a human being.